There are prayers that you can utter silently on pages 180 and 181, or you can just pray the prayers that are in your heart. We continue now on page 377 with a prayer for Israel.
Avinu Shabashamayim, Tzor Yisrael v'Galo, V'harech et Medinat Yisrael, Reshit Tzmichat Gevulatenu.
Together, O Heavenly One, Protector and Redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath the wings of your love. Spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with your good counsel. Establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who dwell there. Amen. Fountainhead of all life, you who rained your blessings on our mothers, Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah, and on our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, causing their seed to sprout and grow and thrive not only in a land flowing, but in the desert places too, May you likewise shower us, their offspring, and those near to us, with a recovery of wholeness, a restoration of the contents in their vessel. May you pour your healing into the barren furrows of those parched by illness and pain, dried out by distancing and despair. Just as you have given us your Torah, the waters of life, as a source of help for all time, so may you send the waters of healing to all who thirst for peace, for wholeness, for shleimut. Page 371, Mishaberach.
Mishaberach Avotenu Mekor Abracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen.
There are names you'd like to share of those who need a healing of body or healing of spirit. I'd like you to say them and sing them here where you're seated.
Mishaberach Imotenu Mekor Abracha Leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
By the rivers of Babylon where we sat down, and there we wept when we remembered Zion. 'Cause the wicked carried us away, captivity required from us a song. How can we sing King Alpha's song in a strange land? For those of a certain age, I don't need to introduce the Melodian song By the Rivers of Babylon, but it's worth looking at what a strange journey it had. Start with the 137th Psalm. Al Naharot Bavel Sham Yashvu Gam Bachinu V'Zachrenu Et Zion. Realize that it was written during the exile of the Jewish people to Babylonia between 586 and 538 before the Common Era. Then move ahead a millennium or so on a continent away to England and the King James Bible that the composers of the song must have known by heart. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down, yea, we wept when we remembered Zion. We hanged our harps upon the willows in the midst thereof. For there they that carried us away captive required of us a song, and they that wasted us required of us mirth, saying, Sing us one of the songs of Zion. How shall we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? Move another few centuries and another continent to the Rastafarian religion of Jamaica, with its notion that the African diaspora is oppressed by Babylon, namely Western society. It is in exile from the promised land of Ethiopia, its Zion. This is what the song's writers had in mind. And then consider the American kids who listened to it and sang it around summer campfires. Which is the text? Which is the translation? Whose version is more accurate? The rivers of Babylon. Now, if your Hebrew is good, you will have heard the word for it that I quoted a minute ago, Babel. This is, and not coincidentally, also part of the name of the structure that features in this week's Torah portion and that Dylan will be chanting tomorrow, the Tower of Babel. According to the Torah, after the flood, all the earth had the same language and the same words. The people decided to build a tower all the way up to heaven. God saw this as a threat. Now no scheme of theirs will be beyond their reach. So God confused the speech of all the earth, and that was the end of both the tower and human unity. Since that time, we have been separated from each other. This has produced two responses from those who think about such things. One is to seek to restore that unity. It's the spirit that you can hear in John Lennon's Imagine. Imagine there's no countries, it isn't hard to do, nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. If we could all just be together. It's the spirit that leads to mysticism, which longs for the unification of all existence. It's the spirit behind such experiments as Esperanto, an attempt at a universal language devised, again I think not coincidentally, by a Jew. On the other hand, this sort of grand unified theory of humanity has its dangers, as its detractors often point out. There will be the pressure to conform, not to be an individual. Conformity will require social and other pressures to ensure that everyone acts together. Think George Orwell's Big Brother from 1984. And that conformity will typically benefit the strong rather than the weak. And this applies, by the way, not just to individuals, but to groups as well. No religion, too. The rabbis say that when the Tower of Babel was being built, the people would regard a human falling to her death from the tower with indifference, but they would mourn the loss of a brick. Those who note these concerns see the destruction of the tower as a liberation, not a failure, and they celebrate difference. One thing you do definitely get from the collapse of the tower scheme is employment for translators. This past summer, I read a fascinating book about translation called Sympathy for the Traitor. The title comes from an Italian saying, traduttore traditore, meaning the translator is a traitor. The concern behind the saying is that each translation loses something of the original, authentic meaning. The author of this book, Mark Polizzotti, challenges that by arguing that translations bring their own new insights into a work. I've been fascinated by the issues raised by translation for some time. In fact, my senior thesis when I was in rabbinical school was on how to translate the prayer book to emphasize the sound as well as the sense. Hebrew prayers often have rhymes and rhythm that don't appear in typical translations. My thesis continues to have an impact. If you go into the library at the New York campus of Hebrew Union College, you will find it helping to hold up the two theses on either side of it. But if my thesis did not change the world, or indeed any significant subset of it, working on it did open my eyes. It helped me understand that translation isn't just a matter of language. It is taking an idea from one place and making it accessible in some form in another. Take an Israeli song called Shiro Shel Ava, or Daddy's Song. It was written by the great Israeli pop singer-songwriter Naomi Shemer, most famous for her song Jerusalem of Gold. Shiro Shel Ava is also a popular Israeli song and a staple of Zionist summer camps. In English it begins, "If on the hills you have planted a cedar in the place of the thorns, it was not in vain, O my brother, for from those cedars the Temple Mount will be built." And then the chorus goes, "Yibaneh, Yibaneh, Yibaneh HaMikdash." The temple will be rebuilt. This song borrows from an ancient piyut, a liturgical poem that was inserted into the Birkat Hamazon, the grace after meals. The poem is called Sur Mishelo and includes the words in that chorus, Yibaneh HaMikdash, the temple will be rebuilt. In the piyut, the meaning is literal. The temple will be rebuilt. When Naomi Shemer was writing of her father, a Zionist chalutz or pioneer, neither she nor he ever intended to help rebuild the actual temple. Heaven forbid, or it would if they had believed in heaven. No, the temple here was a metaphor for the land of Israel, which, unlike the distant hopes of the poem, was actually in the process of being rebuilt. Shemer took an idiom from Jewish religious tradition, a tradition that she and even more her father had inherited, and reworked it. She translated. This song was discussed at a program I attended yesterday that was put on by the Massachusetts Board of Rabbis. The presenter was Rabbi Nama Kelman, Dean of the Jerusalem campus of Hebrew Union College, and the first woman to be ordained a rabbi in the state of Israel. Since we're going to be hearing Rabbi Sally Priesand, the first woman to be ordained as a rabbi in the U.S., in a couple of weeks, I just thought it was appropriate. Now, Rabbi Kelman was teaching about the almost completed new Siddur, or prayer book, of the Israeli movement for progressive Judaism. Although reform, remains a slur in Israel, you don't want to be called a reformee, the progressive congregations are growing, and their growth is fueled by the Hiloni, the secular Israelis. Those who are considering these congregations are looking to reclaim Judaism and Jewish traditions. The renewal movement, as scholars call it, has spoken to these Israeli seekers. The question for the authors of the new Israeli Siddur is how to take the language of prayer and make it meaningful to people who have probably never prayed in their entire lives, at least not in traditional Jewish terms. In other words, it's a process of translation, even if all the texts are in Hebrew. The authors have decided to do a variant of what you have in your hands. They have the original Hebrew, but near it they also have other texts that open the prayers up in really interesting ways. Take the morning prayer, Modeh Ani. Modeh Ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam shehechazarta bi nishmati v'chemla rabba emunatecha. I give thanks before you, living and established King, who has restored my soul to me in compassion. Great is your faithfulness. Our English version, the one that we have in our prayer book, not what I just read you, our English version glosses over certain terms that make many of us uncomfortable, such as God as King. It can't do that in Hebrew. People know what the words mean. So one of the texts gives alternatives to the word. Modeh ani lefanecha, Modeh ani lefanech, Em chai v'kayam. I give thanks to you, living and established mother. And the word for you here is feminine, not the masculine of the original. Or in another line, Modeh ani lefanech, ruach chai v'kayam. I give thanks to you, living and established spirit. All different ways of imagining God. Nearby on the page is a song by Meir Ariel, an Israeli singer-songwriter who was one of the paratroopers who liberated the Western Wall in the 1967 war. If you want to read more of those, there's an amazing book called Like Dreamers that I cannot recommend highly enough. Anyway, This is what Ariel writes in an English translation. He begins with the Hebrew, with the text that we had, Mode ani lefanecha, I'm grateful before you, and then goes on, for all your truth and grace, and the good, and the bad, and the good, that you've done with me and with my household and with my relatives, friends, and fellow citizens, and with the whole world and its people that you've created. And then he shifts. The you, instead of being addressed to masculine, is addressed to the feminine. You can't tell from the English translation, but trust me in this, the Israelis can. Slowly and silently, walking mincingly is our future to come. And you are smiling to me from your sleep. Things will get better, much better, you'll see. It starts early in the morning, and you are laughing to me from your sleep. It's not the original, but it means something to those who grew up with the song or with the image the song conveys. It makes them think about thankfulness in a new way. And after all, isn't that the point? And finally, the Siddur has a traditional piyut, one of those liturgical poems. Piyutim are becoming very popular now in the renewal set. So they're all translations. They're all ways of connecting us, even as we're kept apart by language and history and culture and so much more. The tower is gone. Unity is gone. But the desire to reach to heaven remains, and we gratify it as best we can. Ken Yehi Ratzon, be this God's will.
So when Rabbi told me he was going to be talking about the Tower of Babel tonight, the first thing that came to my mind was a song that isn't a Jewish song. We usually try to do Jewish songs, so I figured, okay, let me look around and see what I can find. I didn't find anything good. Well, I did find one thing, but I wasn't about to be able to learn it for tonight. So I went back to the original thought. And I said, okay, what kind of Jewish connection can I find? Okay, I have one connection, and I will say Dustin Hoffman. If you don't understand it by the time I'm done, talk to me later. What helped out of this?